My fellow Americans and all my fellow, not my fellow FBI agents, but I'm sure you're all Americans too. And I'm making this to all of America, but especially to you guys and women. I know you're very good people. You're intelligent, and you have good hearts, and you really believe in patriotism, and you're willing to die for it. You're great Americans, except that you're following Macvelian Communist lead. So I'm going to try to show you how that it existed historiographically and how it's happened before, and how you're partaking in it. And I know, I know that you're good people. I know many of you. I work with you, and you're very good people. But you're being led astray by these Macvelian communists. Now, I can't go over all my other tapes. You'll have to look at those to see that, to better understand this. But one point I want to get across to you, very, very, very important. How do you go to sleep at night? Do you realize that most of America is frightened to death of the Macvelian communists, but the closest thing to the Macvelian communists are you? There's stories that run rampant about how you take away all these people that try to commit, that want to declare themselves independent nations, which is constitutionally legal. How do you explain to your children as they grow up when they say, Mommy and Daddy, everybody's afraid of you? How do you live with that? I mean, you can accomplish the same things even more if all America had respect for you. Respect is what you want to demand. And I know that you don't commit any crimes yourself, or that you don't think you do. But you do take an oath. I believe you take an oath. Most military does. You take an oath to abide and enforce and stand by the Constitution. Gentlemen and ladies, you take that oath, yet you follow the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act is contradiction against the Constitution. And the Constitution says, I know you're not constitutional lawyers, but you should read it once in a while since you've taken an oath to uphold it. It says you can't make laws against the Constitution. It says it very, very, very specifically. You can't be state or federal laws. And that, number one. And number two, the Constitution isn't a constitution if you can keep deviating it. Look in your dictionaries. I did this in another tape. The definition of a law is a rule that cannot be argued. So when you follow rules or you follow what your supervisors tell you to do and they don't comply with the Constitution, that's the definition of being a fascist. Do you think, Hitler's forces that killed all the Jews and all the military and the SS, etc., etc., do you think there was laws that they were abiding by? They were just following with their superiors. In fact, in the trials around the world, that's what they would say. They were just following their rules. Well, you know as well as I know, I was in the military, there's lawful orders and there's unlawful orders. If the order you're given is against the Constitution, which you take an oath for, it's an unlawful order. So think about that as you watch this, a little histogram on what I'm going to present here. Okay. The things that I'm going to tell you here are just a matter of factual history. There's no questioning about them. If you want, you can go to any graduate library, adequate library, and look it up. There were many, many, many nations that were empires, like the American Empire. Egyptians controlled the world at one time. The Babylonians, you're seeing some of this stuff. By the way, some of it I tried to retrieve. It would not allow me to retrieve, although they're all public pictures. The Assyrians. The Assyrian Empire controlled most of the known world. The Turkish Empire was called the Ottoman Empire. Of course, everybody knows about the Greek and Roman Empire. That lasted 500 years longer than ours. Ours isn't going to exist that long. The French, with Napoleon, tried it. The Germans obviously tried. The British Empire controlled a great part of the world. And you know what? I did a graduate paper, and I graphed all these empires and more, and how they raised to be, like America is, and dominance throughout the world and trade in every aspect. And then I looked to see when they started falling, what was the commonalities. And let me tell you the commonalities. Now think about this, men and women of the FBI, because you help enforce these communists to reach that pinnacle. And then when it falls, you try to stop it, but you can't. Here's the commonalities. Thousands of laws, complex laws. slavery to the state, the same philosophy of for the betterment of the all. I mean, you can read about some of these leaders who thought that the rest of the world were, archaic and backward and barbaric, and they were just doing it for their good. They were conquesting and killing them. It's the same thing. Nothing's new. This isn't new. You think these common, Macvelian communists that run America now have a new concept? No, of course not. And all the same reasons why we're in trouble now, economically and imperialistically and every aspect, all these nations fell for the same reason. Same reason. And this nation is going to fall for the same reason. Same reasons. Nothing's new in history. History keeps repeating itself unless you learn history. If you learn history and assimilate it into your body, mind, and soul, then possibly you can change history. You can change the trend. And the trend is more than a trend. So don't help them. And just in the way I said, you can do it peacefully. Just follow your orders. If you're given an order by a commander to do something that's unlawful, don't do it. If he tries to fire you, go to the news media. That's another thing. Don't frighten the news media. Let the news media emanate the truth. Let them. Don't threaten them in any way possible. That's wrong. That's wrong in the entire complexity of the picture of the evolution and devolution of America. You really should stop it. Okay, I've got a few extra minutes here. I'm going to say some things that Rush Limbaugh was on Jay Leno, and they were both saying they're both capitalists, but of course Jay Leno said there's all kind of problems with capitalism. He didn't particularly really agree with it. And Rush forgot to say a couple things. This country was formed by the capitalistic concept. Of course it's not perfect. It has a big flaw. It has a flaw that greedy people among it want to make more and more and obnoxious amounts of money. But it's what causes... They don't want to kill their people. I mean, they're their customers. Capitalism does not want to kill them, does not want to enslave them, does not want to take any freedoms away. Otherwise, capitalism would never work. Think about that. It's not perfect. It has a big problem of greed. But there's no way the government can stop that because these people that are greedy work hard to establish the country and achieve the achievements that they have. So capitalism is the only way that potentially any society will last. And capitalism, can be totally dismayed by communism. It's just torn apart. And all the economic problems that we're having right now, if you check this out thoroughly, you'll find out they're all because of these Macvelian communist laws and rules, not just the recent ones. Over the years, they subdued capitalism. You subdue capitalism, you stop evolution, and you cause wars, sickness, tyranny, insanity, everything else. It's just simple facts that I'm giving you about this. Capitalism has to prevail. We're not a capitalistic society anymore. There's too many rules and regulations. The auto industry is falling apart. All these reporters never bring out the fact. Boom, they're falling apart because these rules existed long, long before them. And they keep growing, and it's harder and harder to run a business. Any business is harder and harder. I want to tell you one more thing that's happening in news, the president of Iran, he's just a figurehead. I hear, various people in the news media criticizing him and saying he's insane. He's probably not insane at all. He's just a figurehead. You don't understand. The government of Iran and most of the governments over there are theocracies. They're theocracies. They're run by religious people. They're imams. And if their imam tells them to do something, if he doesn't tell them to do something, they don't do something right, the president or the so-called secular branch, which it really isn't, it's completely controlled and dominated by the Islamic religion. I know this scares you, but it's true. And I know the news media doesn't want to tell you because they don't want to scare you. They are all theocracies that exist today are Islamic. And the Islamic leaders, you think that president, I can't pronounce his name, I forget how to pronounce his name, but do you think if he says something wrong or does something wrong, you know what will happen to him? They take him, he'll disappear, of course they'll cut his head off. It's a theocracy, Iran. And I'm not sure that other nations that could declare that they are secular are so secular. I'm sure in any Islamic nation that the imams have a lot to say.